Welcome to DataViz Daily. I'm Kevin McGinley, and we're back after taking a bit of a hiatus. I took a couple weeks off after doing my long series on comparing Oracle DB to Tableau. Needed to get a few things done on the work front, as well as just think about where I wanted to take things from a next direction standpoint with regards to the podcast. And what I decided on is that we're going to sort of shift away from using file-based data sets to talking about how we can connect to other data platforms than just simple files on our desktop. Because that's another component to Oracle DB Desktop that we want to focus on. Other data visualization tools allow you to do that as well. And so let's start exploring what some of that looks like. So the first one that we're going to talk about today is an Oracle database and connecting to that and what that process is like and what that experience is like. So we have an Oracle database here. This is actually an Oracle RDS instance running in the Amazon cloud. And this has a bunch of data warehouse tables that we use for a variety of purposes within Red Pill Analytics. And you can see here I've got a fact table highlighted. We call this our brokerage schema. This has a bunch of sort of fake stock transactions for a fake brokerage firm. And this trade fact table is something that we'd like to pull into Oracle Data Visualization, and in typical sort of star schema Kimball-esque format, we've got a bunch of foreign keys to our dimension tables, as well as some columns that are relevant to a given trade transaction. So let's first start by looking at how we would pull this into Oracle Data Visualization. So first, we're upgraded to Oracle Data Visualization 12.2.2.2. This is another reason that I was waiting a little bit. I knew this release was about to drop. A few minor changes in it that I'll point out down the road, but ultimately I wanted to kind of start with a clean slate on this version. So if we're going to connect to a database, one of the first things that we're going to do is go into the Data Sources tab, and we've got to look at the different connections that we want to have access to. So you can see here I've already created my Oracle RDS connection. If we wanted to create one from scratch, it's as simple as going to create connection, and then we get the long list of different places that we can connect to, or the different types of data platforms that we can connect to. We'll look at some of these in more detail. I've already shown you how to connect to, I believe Dropbox was what I did before. This time we'll actually connect to an Oracle database. So to go in here, if you're familiar with connecting anything to an Oracle database, this is a pretty straightforward screen. I already have it configured. I'm not going to show you my configuration. Don't want to give away all my connection details here, but it's pretty standard. You're going to give it a name, what server are you connecting to, what port do you connect through. Typically 1521 is your standard port to connect over to an Oracle database. What user account and password are you going to be connecting with, and what service name that you have. So I already have that set up here. So this is already set up to connect to the Oracle database that I showed you over here in SQL Developer. It's going to connect to this same EDW schema here. I actually have access to more than just the EDW schema, so you'll see as I make that connection what that looks like. But let's go ahead and come in here, and what I can do now is create a new data source. So the first thing, as I mentioned, what it's going to do is it's going to scan all the different schemas that I have access to. And just to kind of scroll through here, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the EDW schema, and I get a list of all the different tables that I can connect to. Now what I'd like to do is go ahead and grab this trade fact table. So if I double click on it, it gives me all the different columns that I can choose. And at this point, if I want all of them, I can hit add all, and I get hey, this is in the EDW schema, it's the trade F fact table. I get a sort of view of the different columns down here. If I want to actually see the data, I could, but I'm not going to do that right now, because I do want to point out here that as you can see in the trade fact table, account key, broker key, these are foreign keys from a dimension table. And if I wanted to go ahead and grab the broker dimension table, for example, if I double click on that and add them all over, what you're going to notice is that it actually replaced the trade fact table. So one of the quirks right off the bat here is that when you're connecting to a database, the ability to sort of join tables together within the screen does not currently exist. So I can do things like apply filters to the table. So I only pull back certain records. I'll talk about the significance of that a little bit later. I can also come here and sort of give it a description, talk about its sort of refresh of the data. I'm not going to get into that right now. But ultimately, connecting to a table is really sort of what you're limited to right now. So when this comes to connecting to a database, chances are you're going to want to connect to some sort of view, maybe a materialized view, as I'll talk about performance in a little bit, because generally speaking, you're not going to be able to do that sort of joining. Now, there is this enter SQL, and I'll talk about that in a second, but for now I'm going to go ahead and just connect to this particular table. And now I have a TradeF database. So if I right click on that, I can create a project. First I might want to inspect though, because the assumptions that it makes about the different columns are not always accurate. So for example, the foreign keys, I don't want those to be treated as measures. They aren't summable objects. Something like a bid price, I might want an average instead of a sum. So I have to go down through here and modify all of these accordingly. It doesn't always it makes the best guess it can based on the data type. Anything that's a number is going to get a measure designation. Anything that's time or text, as you can see here, is going to get an attribute designation. And that's great. But ultimately I need to go through here and make sure that this is as it should be based on the data set that I have. So just kind of going through here real quick. Set these up. Maybe I want trade price to be an average, so then I hit OK. And it updates the data set with those settings now. And I can come in here and I can do a create project. And you can see I've got all the sort of columns associated. Now, commission is a measure. If I wanted to, I could come here and say, hey, I want a performance tile of commission. Now, I'm not going to actually do this. This is a really bad idea to do right now, because what it's going to do is it's going to try to query the entire table. And if we come back to the table here and actually look at the statistics for the table, we've got over 500,000 rows in this table, 674,000 rows. And so what you're going to find is that generally DV Desktop doesn't do the best job trying to go and grab a lot of data or write big queries against a giant table at one time. So what you're going to see here is I'm going to switch over to actually using a SQL query that summarizes the data pretty significantly. And so what you would probably want to do in this scenario is actually work with some form of aggregate data, or you need to start filtering your data before you even work with it. So, doing something like me just grabbing commission raw here without putting anything in the filter bar is probably a bad idea. The problem in this scenario here is that because I'm just working with the raw fact table, it's not really easy for me to filter on anything right now. I can't say, hey, I want to only pick this particular state. That would be very useful and easy, either using the Office feature from the brokerage key, or I could go into the customer key and pick the state where the customer lives, and I could create a filter that way. But I don't have access to those tables because I couldn't do a join ahead of time. So let's go back out here to our data sources again and work with our RDS connection. I'm going to create a new data source. And this time I'm going to enter SQL. Now to jump back over here to SQL Developer, I already have a query We'll go ahead and select that and copy it. It's basically grabbing by year, grabbing by state, what is the total commission amount. So if we come back here to DV Desktop, and we can paste that query in there, give it a name. Just call it commissions for now. Notice the filter bar or the filter action goes away because any filter that you would want to apply would be in the statement itself. If we hit OK, now we've got another database called commissions. And if I come in here and do a create project, this query actually only generates about 400 rows worth of data. So it's actually a pretty easy query for the tool to run, a very manageable data set to bring back. If I do create best visualization, this is going to look a little funky because there's a lot of states. It's going to try to do a stacked bar that's going to be very, very dense, very colorful looking, and you know, nice choice of colors there that it did. But you know, that's probably not going to be very useful to us. What would probably make more sense is for me to maybe get rid of year here, maybe change this to a map. And since I've got state, it'll automatically know how to plot those states for me. And if I wanted to use year, for example, maybe I want to create a filter on year. Allows me to look at, you know, let's say 2014. And I could probably even bring year down into trellis rows and get a multiple maps by each year. So you can see the performance of this is somewhat tolerable from the standpoint that, you know, we're working with a, you know, sort of very small aggregate data set. And so performance against the database is generally pretty well. If I were to go against the detailed level transactional table, that trade F, you know, those queries take a long time to come back. I had another SQL statement earlier that was at a sort of lower level of aggregation. I had more attributes in there, and it went down to a month granularity and went down into cities and things like that. And those queries came back, but they did take several minutes to return. So that's one of the things that you're going to have to think about as you're connecting a tool like this to a live database. Is, you know, are the objects that you're connecting to designed in any way, shape, or form to support good query performance? Because desktop is definitely not going to be awesome at bringing back large chunks of data at one time. It's just not, you know, sort of got the horsepower and design to do that. So as you're connecting to any kind of database, whether it's Oracle or anything else, you got to think about, okay, how can I limit the data set of what I'm pulling back rather than trying to go after everything all at once. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how to connect to a data set within Oracle Data Visualization Desktop, or a database, sorry, an Oracle database in this case. For DataVis Daily, I'm Kevin McGinley. Thanks for watching.